At the time of Jesus Christ, there were three sects of Jews: Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. Among these groups, the Essenes were probably the least understood. They were most well known for the authorship of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are scrolls or fragments discovered mainly between 1947 and 1960 at 7 sites on the northwestern and western shores of the Dead Sea, including 11 caves near Qumran. The Qumran material contained about 800 original documents written on skin or papyrus, with one embossed on copper. These documents are mainly in Hebrew, with some in Aramaic and a few in Greek. They span all the books of the Old Testament, except Esther, as well as many texts not previously known. The general scholarly opinion dates the Qumran scrolls to between 300 BCE and 70 CE. The conventional view of the Essenes, as recorded by the historian Josephus, Philo of Alexandria, and the elder Pliny, describes them as an ascetic group who lived in rural communities, focused on agriculture, held property in common, engaged in communal religious study, and were quite detached from political issues and commercial pressures. However, there is more to the Essenes than conventionally believed, and this video will delve deeply into their esoteric secrets based on the book Essenes, The Children of the Light, by Stuart Wilson, which draws from the author's hypnotherapy practice. In Wilson's practice, he met 7 subjects who, through past life regression, offered unique perspectives on the Essenes as well as information on Jesus Christ during his time on earth. Interestingly, another book, Jesus and the Essenes, by Dolores Cannon, also used hypnotherapy to obtain information about Jesus and the Essenes. Both books corroborated each other on many essential details about the Essenes and Jesus. This Part 1 video will focus on the Essenes as a group, while a Part 2 video will focus on Jesus as an Essene in his life as recounted by others. One of the first things to know about the Essenes is their origin. Around 150 BCE, a mysterious people called the Kalu, an ancient race who came from the Old Land in the west, possibly Atlantis, moved first to Egypt and then to Israel, where they founded the Essenes. By then, only a few scattered wanderers of the Kalu remained on earth. The word Kalu means, people of the spirit, derived from the Egyptian word ka for spirit. The Kalu were said to possess great wisdom and knowledge, mastering subtle and complex ways of dealing with consciousness and energy. For example, the Kalu seem to have the ability to attune to angelic beings and star beings, likely extraterrestrials. They could use energies and vibrations ranging from numbers, sound, heat, light, color, earth, solar, and star energies. They also had heightened psychic abilities, including inner sight and the ability to see auras. Their inner hearing included the ability to read the Akashic records. Additionally, they could project their consciousness backward and forward in time to see the past and future. One important application of energy is in the field of healing. Besides well-established methods like herbs, ointments, clay, and crystals, the Kalu viewed healing as a reattunement to the individual's essential note at the highest level. Illness, in their view, results from discord within the being of the sick person, similar to a musical instrument that has gone out of tune. If the healer can work with healing angels, they can assist in reattuning the individual to their note. Once the person can fully resonate with their note, the physical level quickly falls into place, making healing much easier. As part of the healing process, individuals were taught to recognize and sound their note, becoming active participants in their own healing. For an advanced Essene with a strong and pure soul, healing could be performed in a more direct and powerful way. The healer would hold the vision of the person before them as a perfect being, completely aligned with the divine pattern. Regardless of the illness, this pattern remains perfect, and the healer affirms that perfection. Then, the healer invokes the power of the spirit to flow into the pattern and link it with the physical body. Advanced healers, having cleared away all obstacles within themselves, become perfect channels for this power. When the spirit moves to manifest perfection, everything else in the universe steps aside. The illness, whatever it may be, simply gives way to this power. The perfect power-filled pattern and the physical body come together as one, and the person is healed, sometimes instantly. This is not so much healing in the conventional sense as it is a restoration of wholeness, manifesting the same perfection on the physical level that exists on the higher level. The manipulation of energies could also be used for defense. For example, it was possible to produce a form of inner reverberation within a stranger, distinct from their own note, causing them to feel uncomfortable and fearful, making them leave the Essene communities in a hurry. Additionally, energies could be used to shift a person's center of balance from the lower part of their body to a higher point, causing them to become unsteady and topple over. In traveling skills, there is a method of moving quickly over distances by lightening the physical body so much that one can bound along, barely touching the ground. Additionally, there is a way of traveling by entering doorways that give access to another realm or level, allowing distant points to be easily and quickly reached. The use of these doorways involves recognizing where they are, knowing the keys to open them, and having the skills to use them. These doorways require a specific process to access and open them, which does not involve a physical key. These were frequently utilized by the ancients, but by the time of the Essenes, these skills were becoming increasingly rare as the knowledge was progressively lost. This applies to many of the skills taught by the Kulu. Despite their best efforts, even the best teachers among the Essenes were no longer able to reach the highest levels in the use of these skills. Much of the Kulu's original knowledge was stored in record-keeper crystals, and only later transferred to the scrolls. The crystals were kept secret and most Essenes only saw the scrolls, though some specialized Essenes were trained to read the crystals through using their third eye. Besides the scrolls from the Kulu, the Essenes over time built up a substantial library of ancient scrolls purchased by specialized Essenes trained to travel in search of them. The Kulu gathered the best knowledge from various sources, combining four major strands to create the Essene way: Egyptian, Zoroastrian, and Pythagorean ideas, and Jewish law. Unlike traditional Jews, the Essenes had very different ways of seeing the spiritual world. For example, while traditional Jews see God as an external entity, the God of the heavens, the Essenes saw God both as a manifestation of the universe and as an infinite source outside the universe, the God of the heart, that can be found within. The Essenes also understood that despite the illusion, the universe is not divided in its fundamental reality, but that the deepest truth of all things is that they are all part of oneness. All Essenes shared a great reverence for angels, especially the Elohim, very high angelic beings who stand above the level of archangels. They saw the Elohim as filling their places by reason of merit rather than through being created great. The Essenes believed these beings rose from lesser angels or the equivalent of human beings through great ages of cosmic development until they reached that high level, a process the Essenes hoped to emulate, as they saw the end goal of human evolution as ascension. Ascension is the third stage in the process of rising into the light. The first stage is gnosis, where the boundaries between us and other forms of life begin to dissolve through an enlightenment experience. The second stage is integration, where one lives from that gnosis every day, becoming a realized being in every moment. Finally, there is the third stage of ascension. There are many levels of ascension. At the first level, which is spiritual ascension, one can continue in a physical body for a while, but when one's task on earth is completed, one goes forward into physical ascension. At that point, the physical body dissolves into light, and from then on, as an ascended being, one lives within their body of light, known in the Egyptian tradition as the Merkaba, translated in Egyptian as light spirit soul, the light body which, when empowered by the spirit, becomes the vehicle of the soul. This process is very similar to the rainbow body in Tibetan Buddhism. Though one can attain ascension at any time, in the divine plan for this planet, it was intended that the great bulk of humanity should achieve it at the end of the planetary cycle. Practically, ascension is seen as a path of the heart, not of the mind. Therefore, the Essenes focused on practicing unconditional love and forgiveness. When one completely and utterly forgives someone, what was done to you or those dear to you ceases to exist in your consciousness, and the act no longer separates you from the doer of the deed. Through forgiveness, the Essenes constantly cleared their consciousness, remaining flexible, balanced, and able to move forward. In this state, there are no obstacles to oneness. The Kalu also had various technologies and machines, which may now be lost. For example, they had jars that could give light without fire, resembling the Baghdad battery that could generate electricity, which was once found in the Iraq Museum but has been lost since the 2003 US invasion of Iraq. There was also a bronze model of the solar system placed at one time in the center of their library. This large model was described as being the width of 2 men with outstretched arms and twice the height of a man. At the center was a large round sphere representing the sun, with a staff running through it into the floor. From the floor level, many rods projected outward, each with a bronze sphere on the end representing the planets in our solar system, placed in their orbital positions around the sun. This model was in constant motion, functioning like a perpetual energy machine, the sun revolving in the rods moving the planets around the sun in their exact positions and distances. The model showed 10 planets, the existing 9 that we are aware of, with Pluto still considered a planet, and a 10th planet called Juno. Juno, the smallest planet, was placed beyond Pluto with an erratic orbit that looped around Pluto, completing its orbit over a long period. When the Kalu came from the old land in the west, they settled first at Lake Mareotis near Alexandria, where they established their first major community. Then they traveled on to found Qumran by the Dead Sea and continued up the trading route to Damascus. These 3 communities were like the main stem of a plant, with all others branching off as side shoots. The Kalu set up other communities linked to this main stem, always outside towns or villages and in remote areas. The communities were grouped in 3s, not only to provide necessary support for one another but also to form triangles within the overall energy system. The Kalu seemed to have a deep understanding of Earth's energy systems and structured their outposts to tap into these energies. Their purpose was to prepare for the arrival of a great teacher, whom they called the Teacher of Righteousness, later identified as Jesus Christ. The central headquarters for the Essenes appeared to be at Qumran, where about 200 people lived. Many ancient scrolls and most of their precious machines were stored there. Other communities were smaller, with 70 being a good-sized community. To the south and west of Qumran, there was a triangle formed by communities at Ein Gedi, Arad, and Hebron. To the north of Qumran, there were communities at Ramah, Jenin, and Mount Carmel. The Kalu were experts in dealing with water and passed this knowledge to the Essenes. The buildings were constructed so that the walls were continuous and the roofs were adjoining, channeling rainwater down into large storage tanks. Furthermore, the Kalu had knowledge of how to grow plants with hardly any water. This enabled the Essenes to survive in arid areas that were considered too poor for any other people to farm and settle. Generally, Essenes could live in communities or towns. Those who stayed in the communities tended to be single, while most of those in the towns were married. Once someone decided to stay in the community, it required a commitment, including giving all their property to the Brotherhood. These properties served as safe houses for the Essenes as they traveled along the route from Alexandria to Damascus. At the height of the movement, about 3,000 or 4,000 people lived and worked as Essenes. The communities, especially those at Qumran, Alexandria, and Damascus, were like places of higher learning and scholarly research, but they also served as schools for the young. The Essenes believed in reading star charts to understand the strengths and wisdom of each individual, which helped determine their roles and the training they would undergo to fulfill their duties. Another belief they held was in the vibration of names. According to Essene teachings, there is an angel of the name who knows the name chosen by the soul. This angel makes its presence felt to the mother, in rare cases, to the father if particularly mystical. If the mother is sensitive to the incoming soul, she will recognize the presence of the angel of the name and know when she is in contact with it. She will sense that the right chord, akin to music, has been struck, feeling that the name resonates with the energy of the incoming soul. The communities also comprise temples with dedicated priests, workshops with busy craftsmen, farms for growing various crops, and places for people to build family lives with children. The priests were respected as the guardians of the rules and ceremonies on which the community was based, but the real authority was the council on which both priests and lay people had an equal voice. In each community, about a dozen elders, chosen from each area of study, played a major part in the council. Each section within the community had a representative who spoke for them at the council, and the chosen leader of each community would speak at the greater councils held at Qumran. All resources were shared equally and distributed according to individual needs. However, if there was any dispute, these elders were tasked with hearing the views of all community members and mediating if necessary. All the communities, except for the one at Mount Carmel, had some craftspeople. The community at Mount Carmel, which was more severe and ascetic than any other community, consisted only of teachers, priests, and students, with no families or craftspeople. Many of the crafts were linked to healing processes, including making oils and ointments, tinctures and incense, and mixtures of healing herbs, as well as the pots and jars to hold these items. By spending part of each day in physical work, the Essenes could establish good grounding, which is essential for working safely with high levels of spiritual energy. Besides an emphasis on a healthy physical life, there was also study, meditation, and prayer. Some people have stated that Essenes were vegetarians or at least pescatarians, but it seems there was no fixed or standard diet, and the food eaten was an individual choice. After the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, the Essene order at Qumran was disbanded as its purpose had been accomplished. Jesus Christ had managed to anchor love energies onto earth, leading to a great leap forward in the spiritual consciousness of humanity. Most of the scrolls, except those of a more Judaic nature, were sent to the libraries of Alexandria and Damascus. This explains why no Egyptian, Pythagorean, or Zoroastrian texts were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. For the same reason, no mystery school or Kabbalistic material was found in any of the caves around the Dead Sea. The model of the solar system was dismantled by Tu Kulu and sent to a place of safety. Teachers with special knowledge made their way to Alexandria or Damascus so that the knowledge they had gathered would be available to the next generation of students. Though the Essenes as an order no longer exist today, their legacy as children of the light continues through esoteric Christianity, in contrast to traditional Christianity, that Jesus Christ stands for. I will cover his story in more detail in Part 2.